Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for this important discussion. My name is Javier Palomares, and I have the privilege of leading the United States Hispanic Business Council in advocating for the 4.8 million Hispanic-owned firms in this country that collectively contribute over $800 billion to the American economy every year. At the USHBC, our mission is to elevate the voice of America's small businesses. We want to mainstream the story of America's Hispanic community and change the narrative that has for too long described our people. In fact, we are collaborators, contributors, business builders, job creators, and taxpayers. We are Americans. That is why at the USHBC, while we're proud to advocate on behalf of men and women who happen to be of Hispanic descent, we never forget that we are first and foremost American businesses. And every tax bill we pay, every job we create, every product we manufacture, and every service we provide goes to benefit our American economy. Around here, the only thing we're prouder of than being Hispanic is being Americans. At the USHBC, we remain committed to ensuring that candidates on both sides of the aisle have an opportunity to directly address the concerns of our small business owners. We want to bridge the gap between our community and our elected officials, because we have seen far too often how congressional theory is simply out of touch with the reality of our day-to-day lives. As a bipartisan organization, we are delighted to host two separate conversations with both candidates in the state of Pennsylvania, as the Commonwealth deserves the opportunity to make an informed decision before they cast their votes in this critical election. To be clear, the USHBC advocates on behalf of the people and the politics and the policies that support our American small business community. Town halls allow each of the candidates their own individual opportunity to address the issues small business owners are facing in today's very difficult economy and this very difficult political environment. In preparation for our conversation today, we have surveyed the Pennsylvania small business community and gathered questions on critical topics that are impacting their operations. With us this morning is Dr. Mehmet Oz, host of the Emmy Award-winning The Dr. Oz Show, and an attending physician at New York's Presbyterian Columbia Medical Center. Dr. Oz, welcome.
Thank you, Javier. Let me, if I can, just give 2 seconds of update, and I know you've got some questions for us as well. I entered this race having spent my whole life in medicine, which is my calling. My father grew up on a dirt floor, and I point that out because his coming to America was an unimaginable dream. And he lived the American dream, and he instilled that same confidence in me that we're the land of opportunity, the land of plenty, that there are many things that we could do as Americans if we just put our heads down, worked hard, work with each other, and serve the nation. And that's the life that I've enjoyed. I've felt of late that that was not a uniformly accepted belief. Immigrants to this country know for sure how special America is because they come from places that didn't offer the same opportunity often, which is why they came. And I've been blessed to witness it firsthand. I want to make sure that same opportunity exists for the next generation. And so I'm intent on focusing on a few topics that are really specific to my specialty. I love healthcare, so that'll be an area that I'll be focused on. I'm very interested in education. We have a kids foundation called Health Corps. It's based on the principle of the Peace Corps. We take college graduates, we teach them about how to mentor children in at-risk schools, and we get them out there to actually get these kids to realize they can have control over their future. We've raised about $80 million with my wife for this foundation, Health Corps, and we've touched the lives of about 2.5 million kids. So it's been a wonderful experience to see how well we can do in schools, but at the same time, I see the limitations. So those two areas will be of great interest. And obviously foreign relations, I have a personal interest in part because my show was in so many countries. I had the opportunity to travel extensively, and I see how important America is as a symbol to the rest of the world. We are the shining city on the hill, and as is often discussed, the reason that the city was on the hill is everyone can see it. So everyone's watching America. We want to make sure we get it right.
Thank you, Doctor. Let me jump right into it. First, kind of a general question. Without a doubt, our nation is facing a very divisive political environment. It seems that every day in Washington, there's some new political squabble or publicity stunt that grabs the headlines. And sadly, the American media is a willing participant. Frankly, Doctor, the American people are tired, and certainly the business community is exhausted from the infighting and instability. We need elected officials and political leaders to step up and understand how to reach across the aisle for the sake of the American people. So the question is, if elected, will you be the kind of leader who puts people before partisan politics, and will you work across the aisle to do the right thing by the people of Pennsylvania?
Yes, and I've been very clear throughout the campaign. That's a major reason I even entered the race. Washington gets it wrong for a bunch of reasons, but in particular because of some of the extreme positions that are taken. And if you really want to bring balance, then you've got to be able to work across the aisle, talk to people who don't always agree with you, and find common ground. That's what we do in the operating room. And again, I'm not a politician, I'm a heart surgeon. So what we focus on is trying to make sure that we get everyone, different backgrounds, working together, focusing on one single big issue. For me, it's fixing the heart. And too often we don't realize that we're so much stronger together than divided, that there's so much more that unites us than divides us. So those are the kinds of insights that I think are valuable for us as a nation to remember, and I pledge to do that.
Let's talk a bit about Pennsylvania's economy. The Keystone State's economy is currently ranked 37th out of 50. Additionally, Pennsylvania ranked 42nd in non-farm employment growth. The state's median household income is $73,000 and has decreased for the second consecutive year, while the poverty rate has increased again for the second consecutive year and now stands at 12%. Clearly, your economy is in a downward spiral. So the question is, what is your plan to begin turning around Pennsylvania's economy?
Well, we have so many opportunities in Pennsylvania. They're right beneath our feet here. We have great agricultural businesses as well, but I want to focus on energy. And if you want to protect the environment and grow the economy and protect wage earners, then you want to harvest the energy that we have beneath our feet. Because in Pennsylvania, we've got enough natural gas, as an example, to power the whole country for hundreds of years. So let's go through this, because if you sit at a diner in central Pennsylvania, you're going to hear the local people telling you this stuff. They all know energy policy. If we can get energy out of the ground, it creates jobs and money flow at several levels. One, you have to lease the land. That gets money to farmers and other wage earners and other property owners. Then you have to drill for the land, through the land to get to the energy. That brings a lot of revenue in. Those are highest paying trade jobs. You build pipelines to take the energy places, also creates lots of jobs. All that money that goes into people's pockets, they spend in local communities, philanthropic efforts. I've seen this firsthand. You see it in the northeast part of Pennsylvania, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, you see it in Pittsburgh, you see it across the Marcellus Shale regions. So these are beautiful opportunities for communities that don't have a lot of other revenue to once again become part of a economic renaissance, a growth, an elevation that allows them to thrive. Then, in addition, you supply inexpensive energy to all the manufacturing businesses and to farmers who need it for their tractors, but they need fertilizer as well. All of this, again, becomes downstream benefits of having inexpensive energy. And then finally, because energy drives 1/3 of all inflation, you can reduce inflation rates. Now, that's just the economic benefits. Independent of that, you have the environmental benefits of having clean natural gas versus other things that could be going on, not just here, but internationally, if you can export that natural gas. And you make America energy independent, which means we can help our allies better. In Europe, they're going to have $10 a gallon of gas this winter, most likely. That's really high. And if you want to help our allies, get them less expensive energy. Meanwhile, we can push back against our adversaries by making them respect the reality that we have lots of energy right here at our fingertips here in America. It's beneficial for us at so many levels. What holds it back sometimes is ideology that doesn't let people look at the science of energy in America. And if you're not willing to acknowledge the best way to move forward to protect our environment is natural gas, together with bridging to green energy sources, then you're going to miss the boat, and you're going to hurt a lot of people in the meantime.
I definitely agree with you on all your points as it relates to energy, but because it's such an important topic, I think it's important, and I know that you spent a lot of time all over Pennsylvania. And I know for a fact, because I've heard from them, that you've been talking to Hispanic business owners all over the state, and we appreciate that. And I'm sure that they have made it clear to you that every dollar that we spend on these higher energy costs is a dollar that we can't invest back into our businesses, creating jobs, not only in Pennsylvania, but throughout the country. I think that the vast majority of the American people do not realize that that the impact that Pennsylvania has on energy is actually national. It goes far beyond Pennsylvania. I think, if I remember correctly, Pennsylvania is the second largest producer of natural gas and the third largest producer of electricity. So your state's position on energy really has national implications. Are you hearing that from the people that you're talking to, or to them, is it really just specifically their local concern?
Oh, yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying over and over again. And I have visited the Latino businesses across the Commonwealth, industries, hardworking individuals, job creators, oftentimes, scrappy, taking advantage of whatever economic opportunities exist to make sure you can hire more people, build businesses larger. And I was up in Allentown doing an event recently, and you can pack the facility we have up there with individuals who just know that they have the futures right there. They can see it, but they just feel held back. And I want to unleash not just energy, but the people of Pennsylvania to once again know that to move up, you don't have to move out, that there are many things you can do in Pennsylvania. If we create those opportunities, people will stay and do them. And I think that's why we need to revisit a lot of what we're doing around immigration to make sure that we're satisfying all those needs. I know in my family, when my father came to this country, there was a very clear vision by America of what it wanted in its immigrants. They wanted people who are hardworking, industrious. Sometimes they were educated, sometimes not. We need to return to a thoughtful approach to making sure that the jobs that need to be filled are filled with people who are capable and hardworking and have the same vision for their own success as Americans.
You touch on a couple of things that we're going to touch on later. One of them is people leaving the state, and the other one is immigration. But before we go, and I apologize, just one last question on this issue of energy. And it kind of touches back on this issue that we started with, that had to do with your ability or your willingness to collaborate and reach across the aisle to work with Democrats if it's in the benefit of the people of Pennsylvania. So let me ask you specifically, if elected, will you support fracking?
I'll support fracking without question. It's at least 70-year-old technology, maybe older. It's been around for a long time. It's gotten much better. And much more precise. I visited facilities both in the western part of the state, but in the Northeast as well. Wellheads, I understand how it's done. As a scientist, I've tried to study how the natural gas has gotten out of the ground safely, cleanly. And there's a cracker plant now in Beaver County, just outside of Pittsburgh, that is converting some of the material coming out of these wells to plastics and other material that we need. There's a whole bunch of opportunities that come out of our being able to drill both down and laterally and cleanly harvest natural gas. We should be encouraging these businesses, and we should also be helping states around us who could benefit from our natural gas.
So to that end, and the last question on this issue, if elected, would you collaborate with my fellow Democrat, Joe Manchin, on the permitting reform that he has proposed that would streamline the approval process for critical infrastructure projects like transmission lines and pipelines to be built in the northeastern United States, including in Pennsylvania?
I haven't seen details of this. I'd be obviously, it sounds like the kind of thing I'd be interested in. I want to unleash energy, so ways of doing that are fair to the American public and encourage industries is what America's always been about.
Okay, on to the because you touched on it. Let's talk a bit about the population in Pennsylvania. When compared to states in the Northeast, Pennsylvania's stagnating population isn't that bad. But when compared to the rest of the United States, it wound up near the bottom of the list, ranking 47th out of 50 in cumulative domestic migration, which means there's more people leaving your state than coming in, especially young people. Except for a revival of sorts that happened around Allentown, which I know you are very aware of, thanks to more Hispanics moving into that area. But other than that, the outlook for your state in terms of population looks quite bleak. So the question is, what will you do to attract more people to the Commonwealth and especially prevent young people from leaving?
We need to improve our schooling without question. Although we've got some great public schools, we have inadequate number of positions for kids interested in vocational jobs, career tech. I was in a facility in Westmoreland County, a big high school that has a career tech facility in it, and they said about 1,000 kids that come through it. They could take 2,000 kids because that's how many applied. Yet they didn't have the funding to achieve that. So we have to improve the opportunity of young people to make a good living in Pennsylvania. That's one way of doing it. We have to increase manufacturing jobs. But right now, most businesses that I visit need people to work there. We just have to make sure that they're well-paying jobs that are fulfilling to the young people who are considering them. I'm actually optimistic about Pennsylvania because we have so much untapped opportunities just by dealing with regulatory overreach and some of the taxes that are quite onerous in the state. I think we'll be able to lighten the load for job creators, and by doing that, create more opportunities for young people to stay here.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned overreach and you mentioned young people staying in your state. I feel like I have to ask, and I want to be very respectful and tread very lightly here, because it's not. Some would say it's not directly a business issue, but I can't help to think that would have an impact. There was a recent study done by the Women's Policy Research that indicated that recent abortion law changes could cost states upwards of $105 billion annually by reducing labor force participation, increasing the time off and turnover among women aged 16 to 45 years. Considering that 58% of women in Pennsylvania are in the labor force, do you worry that potentially your state's stance on this issue might affect this exodus that we're talking about?
I haven't seen the material you're talking about, but I've been very focused on making sure that the quality of life of people in Pennsylvania is maximized. You do that by increasing well-paying jobs, make sure that you've got the most opportunities out there. We've got great educational facilities. We have the opportunity to train and prosper, which is what most young people want. What hurts them a lot is inflation, because it's a negative tax on a lot of young people. It hinders their ability to make the first payment on a new home, which a lot of couples want to do. It's problematic for families because some of the things they normally would be able to do, they just can't afford anymore. And it also causes issues for their parents and grandparents. I mean, seniors are telling me continually that they're having difficulty with getting their Social Security checks to stretch far enough because of the impact of inflation. These are all addressable, but you've got to make some difficult decisions to impact inflation. Obviously, we've talked about energy. That's a effective way of reducing inflation because it drives so much of it. But you also have to be sensible in your spending. And there are ways of, I think, supporting social programs that are important to the nation, but not recklessly spending our children's money. And that's the job of people in Washington to get right. And when we are balkanized, when we're taking extreme positions and not collaborating, we start making choices that maybe aren't the wisest for the country. My job in Washington is bring balance, to get Democrats and Republicans to collaborate and then figure out what's the real way forward. But if everyone agrees that there's a path to take, we should take the path. We shouldn't be fighting with each other when we already have sort of gotten together on the big issues. And a lot of this, and we haven't talked much about it, and I've got to run because I've got continuous events all day, but the foreign policy ramifications. Maybe we can just touch on that, and then I'll let you guys go. We have to be aggressive in bringing back jobs to America. We have to onshore positions, especially in items of national security. For example, some of the protective gear during COVID wasn't making here. We didn't have antibiotics that were made in America. So we didn't even have the raw materials to make pills that could be helpful to people who were getting sick. And I think COVID unveiled that weakness. We have to address it. And by onshoring, we'll also protect ourselves from adversaries who don't have the same interests. And the Chinese government has been a adversary in many of these issues. And I think it's important for us to make it clear that we'll do what's necessary to protect this country, but also send a message overseas that we'll support our allies. And by being aggressive in these issues, I think you send a clear enough message that foreign policy becomes a bit more predictable. So countries don't try to get away with stuff while they're dealing with America. They respect that we'll protect our allies, hold our adversaries accountable, and do the right thing. That's what America's been about. That's why we are the shining city on the hill. Javier, thank you very much for your time. I've enjoyed. I know I spoke with some of you last week on a Zoom call that didn't get, I guess, transmitted to everybody. I hope for the people who are there, you heard it twice. For the ones that didn't, you got a whole new rendition of it. I congratulate you on everything you're doing. Coming together in trade groups is really critical because it creates a middle level where people can meet each other. It allows Democrats and Republicans and independents to be in the same place at the same time and get to know each other so that you can understand where our commonalities are and reassure yourselves that there's much more that unites us than divides us. My favor that I ask of you is, as you think about this upcoming election, those of you in Pennsylvania, it's really critical to ask one key question. Are you happy with where the country's headed? And if people are not, and I'm not, then know that I'm the person for change, that I really know that we are the land of opportunity and plenty, and we can make that come true for the next generation. I do believe that we can be an all of the above energy state. We can make our city streets safe, which we haven't talked about much, but is a big crisis. We can secure the border and allow legal immigration, which would also deal with the fentanyl that's pouring across the border. And we can give choice to parents for the schools that they desire. But most importantly, I want you to know that I believe in you. And if we do it together, you and I, then we'll be able to get the balance that we desire in Washington and be able to address these issues that are of national interest to us. But you have to go vote. And if you go to droz.com, there are opportunities there to support our campaign, but also read about my positions. Grab a bunch of people that are like-minded as you. Make sure that you, especially you get to independent folks and explain points that I made today. Get them to come with you. That's how we're going to win this election.
Allow me a couple of seconds to close this out, Doctor. When I think about you in this race, I'm reminded of the old adage that the purpose of life is to live a life of purpose. And I believe that you have lived a purposeful life, first by pulling yourself up and out, to becoming a successful medical professional and an entrepreneur, to literally saving lives and applying your God-given talents towards the betterment of others. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, you are the living embodiment of the American dream. And now to offering yourself up for public service in a job that frankly is often very stressful and often thankless. Whatever the outcome of this race, I want to commend you for your hard work, your hustle, and your humility when reaching out to the people of Pennsylvania and particularly to my Hispanic community. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, all of you for joining us. And thank you again, Dr. Oz. Good day to you.
Good day. God bless.